Alright, this is a video on the spreadsheet rules of thumb. And what you're seeing here is the first sample exam that you're going to encounter in the class. And I'm going to go through it, and I want to point out that one of the number one things I'd like you to take from this class is your ability to produce work in the style that your employer wants to see it. It doesn't matter if you write a perfect letter if it doesn't look the way your boss wants it to look. I come from the legal profession. I could write an absolutely wonderful brief, but if I don't have it formatted exactly the way the court rules want it formatted, it can be thrown out and disregarded. So I have I just read my student evaluations, and there were a lot of students frustrated with the point deductions that were taken for formatting errors. So this time I'm going to make it absolutely clear to you how I'm going to look at format. So let's start by coming up here to the first section, which I'm going to highlight. That is the title section. The title of each spreadsheet shall be in bold and underline. The name, you do the best you can to give it a good name. Mortgage calculator and amortization schedule works for me on this one. If you go through the sample exams, you'll know what to call it, but I'm looking for it to be bold and underlined. I am looking for it to be followed by, prepared by your name, prepared on the date you prepare it, and I want that purpose to reflect that you understand what it is you're trying to do with the spreadsheet. If the spreadsheet you're constructing is some kind of retirement calculator, then you say, I'm constructing a retirement calculator that uses the income and estimates regarding future raises and return on investment to portray the value of an investment portfolio at the time of retirement. For this first mortgage calculator, just like I wrote, I'm preparing an amortization table showing the fixed payment of a mortgage of a specified number of years at a specified interest rate. You want to give your user enough information to understand what they're doing. At the same time, I'm not going to deduct points if it's not word for word like my sample. I'm just looking for you to take seriously your responsibility to provide your user with a purpose. If you give me something like the purpose of this worksheet is to get an A, that's very cute. It's been done 100 times. I'll take points off for that. If you say the purpose is to get out of the testing center as fast as possible, again, very clever, but you'll lose points for that. So you can look at this sample and you can see exactly what it is I'm looking for. The next thing, your spreadsheets will generally have two sections, a data section and an answer section. The data section assembles all of the information that you need in order to provide your user with the answers. Later on we may have summary answer sections, and we may have forward proofs and backward proofs. Just understand that section bars are going to be formatted the way you see here. They go across the screen in such a fashion so that when I look at the print, I'm going to go to print preview here to show you what it looks like on one page. That's why the section bars are the way they are, so that when you print this out, your user sees a coherent one page of information. Let's go back home. Typically you use the number of columns, maybe add an extra just to be safe, so that if you're going to need 5 columns for your output, you have your bar 5 columns wide or 6 columns wide. I typically go an extra column because that gives me room that I can use to kind of adjust my spreadsheet and make it look good. Make sure that my data section, this would be wrong. Let me show you what I don't like to see. If I have my titles here, see how that monthly payment line is truncated by that other column? That would lose you points. I want to see that you've gone through and you've structured it out nicely. And as I do each walkthrough, I will emphasize these rules, so that each time you look at my sample exam and we do a run through, I'll go over them. The section bars will have thick black box border. When I bring down the border here, it has all these different options. I want to see you do exactly that. I don't want to see, for example, every box here have a thick box border. If it's not on my sample, don't do it. If it is in the sample, do it. Try to make it look as close to what I've provided as possible. The other thing I like to see one blank line above and below section bars. One blank line above and below. I like to see my data variables centered. That kind of sets them apart. It shows that they're different than the table. Where an interest rate has decimal points, make sure you put them in. Otherwise, when I type in 5.75, it could be rounded up to 6. And that's confusing for your user. So if I give you a down payment, for example, that has no decimal points, you don't need to add them because I've told you it's 20%. But interest rate, you typically will have 2 decimal points. You typically will use dollars and cents. When we come down to your column headings, the biggest problem I see with student work is that the columns are all crunched together. Let me just show you briefly what I will typically see on the first test. Everyone will try and go with a column width like that, and then maybe they'll bring it out just a bit to get rid of those hash marks of these signs right here, and they'll stretch it out once or twice. But I'm going to come along on all of your tests, either myself or my grader, and I'm going to put a big number there. And if I get a column that goes to hash marks, you're going to lose points. And frankly, I do that for a reason. Let's go back here and go back to the way my thing used to look. I want you to develop the habit of spacing it out so that your numbers are easy to read. Again, I want you to just take a look at that page. If you have a whole page you can put your data on, spread it out. There's no need for it to be all crammed together like a dictionary or a phone book. Make it easy for your user to read your information. Those are my general formatting rules of thumb. One of the big ones here is going to be that I want all data variables named. I should be able to go to the formula box, go to Name Manager, and each section in your data section should have a corresponding name in the Name Manager. Okay, there may be some exceptions to that as we go through depending on the type of the exercise, but I will, when I download your spreadsheet, open up Name Manager and I will see if you did it right. Okay, so everything needs to have a variable name. You'll learn how to do that, but just as a review, when I click on Home Price, I expect to see a name in the name box. Okay. Also, one of the things that I don't see often enough that will be required on every single exam you submit is a simple footer. A footer, let's go back here to the print, is a line at the very bottom of each page that tells the user where the computer file is. You can see right here that it's in my desktop. Okay, I get a lot of students who forget the footer, or they make a header, or your format points show me that you know what you're doing and that you've studied and practiced. I am looking for a footer. Every single run through will tell you how to do a footer, and I think I'll even put a sample little brief video to show you how to do that. So I'm looking for the footer. I'm also looking to see that everything is spelled correctly. I know that for a lot of you English is a second language, but all you have to do is run a spell check. Okay, spell check is on the review bar. Okay, here's your home, here's your review bar. Go to spelling, and then if there had been any spelling errors, it would have told me there. That's easy to do, saves you points. Okay, I just reviewed this to make sure I covered everything, and I noticed I left a couple things out. The colors in the data section here are designed to be a cue to your user that these 4 cells are user entered numbers. Okay, the other cells, and what I'll do is I'll make the program show the formulas. One of the things I do when I check your work is I go to this mode so that I can make sure, for example, every reference should be to a name, unless it's a relative reference, in which case, like we see here, you'll just have cell addresses. But only the colored boxes should have numbers in them. All the other cells have formulas. I don't want to see colors that are different for each box. The colors should all be consistent. If you use a green color bar for your data section, then you should have a matching green showing the variables. I don't like to see overly bright colors. It's just distracting. I've seen everything done. Try to keep the format just like you see here. I don't need marching red lights around each box or things like that. The other thing I see quite often is that when you have a table, it looks to me like most people will go through afterwards and they'll highlight things and they'll impose a format. But often this little number at the top will get left, and I'll see something like this, where everything looks good, but there's just that one little number that somebody didn't format. You avoid that by formatting as you go and by doing a good review of your work before you turn it in. The other thing I'd like you to look for when you turn in your work is, does it make sense? If we have a loan of $600,000, I'm not going to have a monthly payment of $300,000 over 30 years. When you look at your formulas, obviously in the first one, it's really easy to see if you're on the right track because you'll come to zero at the end if you did it right. But it helps to kind of do the math and understand what you're actually showing your user. The order of how you put your columns in and the order that you list your variables is somewhat important, but I will typically give that to you on the test. So these are the rules of thumb. These are the things that distinguish someone that's actually learned how to do something in a form that I'm looking for. And this is no different. Don't think this is arbitrary. This is no different than the business world or any professional organization. Large corporations, for example, have very strict format rules for everything that they do. They use a certain typeface. Their letters and their correspondence look a certain way. I'm just trying to get you to get in certain habits that will make your life much easier as you go on to your professions.